Good evening, dear travelers, and welcome back to Snug as a Bug. I am Atticus, your guide for tonight's journey through the ancient Greek world of myths and legends. Settle into the comfort of your bed. Let your body sink into the softness beneath you and gently release the weight of the day with a slow, deep breath in and out. You are safe, calm, and ready to embark on a journey through time. Tonight, we explore the captivating tales of ancient Greece, where gods and mortals walk together, and where the stars above hold stories as old as the earth itself. We will begin in the vast expanse of the heavens, where the stars shimmer like scattered diamonds upon an endless tapestry of night. There reigns a power unlike any other, the mighty Zeus, king of the gods. From his throne atop Mount Olympus, he watches over mortals and immortals alike, his judgment swift, his will unyielding. Though he is known as the bringer of order, the wielder of divine justice, there are moments when his fury cannot be contained. And when Zeus is angered, the sky itself trembles, the seas churn with restless fury, and the very earth quakes beneath his wrath. This is a tale whispered by the ancients, carried by the winds through the ages, a tale of betrayal, defiance, and the terrible retribution of the Thunderer. Before we immerse ourselves in the legendary tales of gods and heroes, let's take a moment to fully relax and unwind. Gently close your eyes and allow your body to settle, feeling the soft embrace of your bed beneath you. Take a long, slow inhale, and then a deep exhale, releasing any lingering tension with your breath. With each cycle of breath, your body grows lighter, your mind becomes still, and your heart beats in a calm, steady rhythm. Imagine now that you are standing on a quiet hill at dusk, overlooking the rolling fields of ancient Greece. The warm breeze carries the scent of olive trees, and the distant murmur of the sea echoes faintly in the background. Above you, the night sky stretches wide, a canvas of deep indigo dotted with shimmering stars. Each star holds a story, a tale whispered by the gods themselves, waiting to be heard. Feel the soft grass beneath your feet, cool and comforting. As you look out over the horizon, the sky is bathed in the golden glow of twilight, and the world around you is still, peaceful, and timeless. The air is filled with a sense of magic, as though the very land is alive with ancient energy. As you stand here, allow yourself to become one with this ancient world. Feel the gentle pulse of the earth beneath you, steady and eternal. You are safe, cradled by the calm of the night and the deep history that surrounds you. Now, as you breathe deeply, feel yourself being drawn into the world of myth. The stories are waiting to unfold, to carry you on a journey through the realms of gods and mortals, of heroes and legends. You are ready to begin, ready to hear the tales that have echoed through time. Let go of the world around you and allow these ancient myths to carry you into a deep, peaceful sleep. Chapter 1. The Power of the King of Gods. Zeus, the ruler of Olympus and the most powerful of all gods, sat upon his golden throne, gazing down at the world of mortals with an expression of quiet contemplation. His throne, crafted from the purest gold and adorned with jewels that shimmered like stars, sat at the highest point of Olympus, allowing him to look out across the entirety of creation. The sky above was clear, the clouds white and soft as they floated across the blue expanse. The sun shone brightly over the world below, and from his perch, Zeus could see the lands of Greece spread out before him, the cities and villages bustling with life. Though he was the ruler of gods and men, Zeus was not a distant or indifferent ruler. He cared for the world he had helped shape, and he watched over mortals with a sense of both pride and responsibility. But there were times when his patience was tested, times when mortals, or even gods, forgot their place and dared to challenge his authority. Zeus's power was unmatched, for he wielded the thunderbolt, the most feared and revered weapon in the cosmos. Crafted by the Cyclops in the depths of Tartarus, the thunderbolt was a symbol of Zeus's divine authority, capable of bringing storms, earthquakes, and destruction with a single strike. It was not a weapon to be used lightly, but when Zeus's wrath was kindled, no force in the universe could stop him. The gods of Olympus were well aware of Zeus's temper, and they took great care to avoid incurring his wrath. Even the most powerful among them, Hera, Poseidon, and Hades, respected Zeus's authority and knew the consequences of defying him. For though Zeus was a just ruler, he was also a god of immense pride, and those who challenged his rule rarely escaped unscathed. The mortals, too, had learned to fear and respect Zeus. They prayed to him for protection and prosperity, offering sacrifices at his temples and invoking his name in times of need. Yet, despite their reverence, there were always those who believed they could defy the will of the gods, those who dared to act with hubris, thinking themselves equal to the divine. It was these acts of defiance, these moments of mortal arrogance, that stirred the wrath of Zeus. For though he could be merciful, he was also the god of justice and retribution, and when his anger was kindled, the consequences were severe. This is the tale of Zeus's wrath, of the moments when his divine anger was unleashed upon the world, bringing destruction and chaos to those who had dared to defy the king of the gods. Chapter 2. The Punishment of Prometheus. One of the most well-known tales of Zeus's wrath is the story of Prometheus, the titan who defied the will of the king of the gods by giving fire to humanity. Prometheus, whose name means forethought, was one of the few titans who had sided with Zeus during the great war between the Olympians and the Titans, known as the Titanomachy. Though Prometheus had once been a trusted ally, his compassion for humanity would ultimately lead to his downfall. After the war, Zeus had divided the world among the gods, assigning each one their respective domains. The mortals who lived on the earth below were left in a state of ignorance, their lives ruled by the whims of nature and fate. Prometheus, who had always had a deep fondness for mankind, watched as the mortals struggled to survive in a harsh and unforgiving world. They lived in darkness, without the knowledge of fire to warm them or light to guide their way. Moved by their plight, Prometheus made a decision that would change the course of history. Against the express will of Zeus, Prometheus stole fire from the heavens and gave it to mankind. The fire brought warmth and light to the mortals, allowing them to cook their food, forge tools, and build cities. It was a gift that would elevate humanity from the darkness, granting them the means to thrive and shape their own destiny. But in doing so, Prometheus had directly defied Zeus's command. The fire was not merely a physical element, it was a symbol of divine power, a force that was meant to remain in the hands of the gods. By giving it to mortals, Prometheus had bridged the gap between gods and men, granting humans a power that Zeus believed they were not ready to wield. When Zeus learned of Prometheus's betrayal, his anger was swift and terrible. The skies darkened with storm clouds, and the rumble of thunder echoed across the heavens as Zeus's rage grew. To defy Zeus was to defy the natural order of the cosmos, and the punishment for such an offense would be severe. Prometheus, knowing that he had incurred the wrath of Zeus, did not flee. He stood by his decision, believing that humanity had the right to better their lives and shape their own fate. But Zeus, blinded by his anger, saw Prometheus's actions as an unforgivable act of rebellion. Summoning his thunderbolt, Zeus called forth his servants, the divine blacksmith Hephaestus and his henchmen, to capture Prometheus. The Titan was bound in unbreakable chains and taken to the remote, desolate peaks of the Caucasus Mountains. There, on a lonely crag, Prometheus was chained to a massive rock, his arms and legs stretched out in eternal torment. But the chains were not the only punishment Zeus had devised. Every day, an enormous eagle, the sacred bird of Zeus, would descend from the sky and tear into Prometheus's flesh, devouring his liver. The pain was unimaginable, but the true horror of Prometheus's punishment lay in its repetition. Each night his liver would regenerate, only for the eagle to return the next day and feast upon it again. The torment was endless, a daily reminder of Zeus's wrath and the price of defying the will of the gods. For centuries, Prometheus endured his punishment in silence, never once crying out for mercy. He remained resolute, believing that his actions had been just, even as the pain tore through him day after day. But though Zeus's wrath was great, there was still room for mercy. In time, it was Heracles, the son of Zeus and the greatest of heroes, who would come to Prometheus's aid. As part of his 12 labors, Heracles journeyed to the Caucasus Mountains, and with his great strength, broke the chains that bound Prometheus to the rock. Though Zeus had allowed Prometheus's release, the scars of his punishment would remain forever. The tale of Prometheus serves as a warning to all who would defy the gods, for even the most compassionate of actions can incur the wrath of the king of Olympus. Chapter 3. The Flood of Deucalion. Zeus's anger was not limited to the gods and titans who defied him. There were times when mortals themselves, in their arrogance and hubris, provoked the wrath of the king of the gods. One of the most devastating examples of Zeus's anger toward humanity is the story of the Great Flood, which brought destruction to nearly all of mankind. In the early days of the world, when the gods still walked among mortals, the earth was filled with both beauty and chaos. The mortals who had been given fire by Prometheus began to prosper, building cities and civilizations that spread across the land. But with their prosperity came corruption. As the generations passed, the mortals grew arrogant and selfish, turning away from the gods who had given them life. They became cruel and deceitful, waging wars, committing acts of violence, and showing no respect for the natural order of the world. The sacred laws of hospitality, justice, and piety were forgotten, and the earth was stained with blood. Zeus, watching from his throne on Olympus, grew increasingly disgusted by the behavior of mankind. The mortals, who had once been weak and humble, now believed themselves to be above the gods. Their hubris, their belief that they could live without fear of divine retribution, kindled Zeus's wrath. He called a council of the gods, gathering them in the grand hall of Olympus to discuss the fate of humanity. The gods, each seated on their thrones of gold and marble, listened as Zeus spoke of the mortals' wickedness and the need for divine justice. "There is no hope left for mankind," Zeus declared, his voice booming across the hall like the thunder that accompanied him. "They have turned their backs on us, defiling the earth with their greed and cruelty. It is time to cleanse the world and start anew." The gods murmured among themselves, their faces solemn. They knew that when Zeus spoke of cleansing the world, he meant a great and terrible flood, one that would wipe away the corruption of mankind and leave only the pure and righteous to rebuild. But not all the gods agreed with Zeus's harsh judgment. Poseidon, the god of the sea, was eager to unleash the waters of the ocean upon the world, but others, like Athena and Apollo, were hesitant. They believed that there were still mortals who were worthy of saving, those who had remained true to the gods and had lived lives of virtue. Zeus, though unmoved by the arguments of his fellow gods, agreed to show mercy to those who were deserving. He would not wipe out all of humanity, but the vast majority would perish in the flood, leaving only a few righteous souls to repopulate the earth. And so the great flood was unleashed. Zeus sent forth a mighty storm, calling upon the winds and the rain to fall in torrents. The skies darkened and the earth trembled as the waters rose, covering cities, villages, and mountains alike. The rivers overflowed their banks, and the seas swallowed the land, leaving nothing but a vast, endless ocean. Mortals caught in the deluge cried out for mercy, but their pleas went unheard. The floodwaters consumed everything in their path, sweeping away homes, temples, and the very foundations of civilization. Yet, amidst the destruction, there was one couple who had remained faithful to the gods, Deucalion and Pyrrha, the son and daughter-in-law of Prometheus. They had lived lives of piety and virtue, never once turning away from the gods or engaging in the wickedness of their fellow mortals. As the floodwaters rose, Deucalion and Pyrrha were warned by Prometheus of the coming disaster. Following his advice, they built an ark, a great wooden vessel that would carry them safely through the storm. For days and nights they floated upon the endless sea, the rain beating down upon them as the world around them was swallowed by the waters. When the storm finally subsided and the waters began to recede, Deucalion and Pyrrha found themselves alone in a desolate, waterlogged world. The land was barren, the cities and forests gone, and the only sounds were the gentle lapping of the waves against their ark. Filled with sorrow for the loss of their fellow mortals, Deucalion and Pyrrha prayed to the gods, asking for guidance on how to rebuild the world. Zeus, moved by their devotion, answered their prayers. He instructed them to cast stones behind them as they walked, and from those stones new men and women would be born. And so Deucalion and Pyrrha followed the will of Zeus, and from the stones they cast, a new generation of mortals arose. These new men and women born from the earth would live in a world cleansed of corruption, a world where the wrath of Zeus would no longer be necessary. The flood of Deucalion serves as a reminder of the consequences of hubris and disobedience to the gods. Though Zeus's anger was fierce, it was tempered by mercy for those who remained true to the divine order. Chapter 4. The Destruction of the Giants. Zeus's wrath was not limited to the mortal world. Even the divine and semi-divine beings who sought to challenge his authority would face his fury. One of the most famous instances of Zeus's anger being unleashed upon the immortal world is the tale of the Gigantomachy, the great war between the Olympian gods and the giants. The giants were the offspring of Gaia, the primordial goddess of the earth, and Uranus, the sky. Born from the blood of Uranus when he was castrated by Cronus, the giants were enormous, powerful beings with great strength and a deep hatred for the Olympian gods. They believed that the gods had usurped their rightful place as rulers of the cosmos, and they sought to overthrow Zeus and his kin. Gaia, angered by the defeat of the Titans in the Titanomachy and the imprisonment of her children in Tartarus, called upon the giants to rise up against the Olympian gods. She promised them victory, claiming that the gods could only be defeated by beings born of both divine and mortal blood. The giants, armed with immense strength and the power of the earth itself, waged war against the gods. They hurled massive boulders and trees at Olympus, shaking the very foundations of the divine realm. The earth trembled with their footsteps, and the sky darkened as the battle raged. But Zeus, the king of the gods, would not be defeated so easily. With his thunderbolt in hand, Zeus led the charge against the giants, hurling bolts of lightning that shattered mountains and scorched the earth. The other gods joined the fray, each wielding their own powers to fight off the colossal foes. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, struck down the giant Enceladus, while Poseidon, the god of the sea, used his trident to bury the giant polyboats beneath the waves. The battle was fierce, but the gods were relentless in their defense of Olympus. Zeus's wrath, kindled by the audacity of the giants to challenge his rule, burned brighter than ever before. With each strike of his thunderbolt, the giants were pushed back, their forces dwindling as the gods pressed forward. But the giants were not easily defeated. Gaia, determined to see her children victorious, called upon the earth itself to aid the giants in their fight. From the depths of the earth, she summoned new giants, stronger and more powerful than before. The gods knew that they could not defeat the giants with their divine power alone. They needed the help of a mortal, one who could wield the strength necessary to bring down the mighty foes. It was Heracles, the son of Zeus and a mortal woman, who answered the call. Armed with his great strength and the bow of Apollo, Heracles joined the battle, his arrows striking true as he brought down giant after giant. With Heracles by their side, the gods gained the upper hand. Zeus, seeing the tide of battle turn in their favor, unleashed the full power of his thunderbolt, sending a wave of destruction across the battlefield. The giants, unable to withstand the combined might of the gods and Heracles, were finally defeated. Zeus's wrath, once kindled, had been satisfied. The giants who had dared to challenge the king of the gods were cast down, their bodies buried beneath the earth, where they would remain for all eternity. The Gigantomachy, like the Titanomachy before it, served as a reminder of the power of Zeus and the consequences of defying his rule. The gods of Olympus, though often seen as distant and aloof, were not to be trifled with, and those who sought to overthrow them would face the full fury of the King of the Gods. Chapter 5. The Fall of Ixion. Among the mortals who dared to provoke the wrath of Zeus, none suffered a fate as terrible as that of Ixion, a king whose hubris led him to commit a grievous crime against the gods. The story of Ixion is one of betrayal, arrogance, and divine retribution, and it serves as a stark warning to all who would defy the will of the gods. Ixion was the king of the Lapiths, a proud and ambitious ruler who believed that he could do no wrong. His power and wealth were unmatched, and he considered himself favored by the gods. But Ixion's pride would ultimately lead to his downfall. In a moment of madness, Ixion committed a heinous crime. He murdered his father-in-law, breaking the sacred laws of hospitality that were upheld by the gods. This act of betrayal shocked both mortals and immortals alike, for hospitality was considered one of the most sacred duties in the ancient world. Despite his crime, Zeus took pity on Ixion. The king of the gods believed that Ixion could be redeemed, and so he invited him to dine at the table of the gods on Olympus. It was an unprecedented act of mercy, for no mortal had ever been granted such an honor. But Ixion, blinded by his arrogance, repaid Zeus's mercy with betrayal. While on Olympus, Ixion became infatuated with Hera, the queen of the gods and the wife of Zeus. His desire for her grew, and in his hubris, Ixion believed that he could seduce the queen of the gods. Zeus, ever watchful, saw Ixion's treachery and devised a plan to test him. He created a cloud in the shape of Hera, an illusion so perfect that it was indistinguishable from the real goddess. Ixion, believing the cloud to be Hera, pursued her and committed an unspeakable act. When Zeus revealed the truth of what Ixion had done, his anger was swift and terrible. The skies darkened and thunder rumbled across the heavens as Zeus prepared to deliver his judgment. Ixion, who had already been shown mercy once, would not be spared a second time. Zeus condemned Ixion to an eternal punishment in the depths of Tartarus, the darkest and most desolate part of the underworld. There, Ixion was bound to a flaming, spinning wheel, which would turn forever, causing him unending pain and torment. The wheel, suspended in the void of Tartarus, spun endlessly, its flames scorching Ixion's flesh as he cried out in agony. His punishment was eternal, for there would be no escape from the wrath of Zeus. The tale of Ixion serves as a powerful reminder of the consequences of hubris and betrayal. Though Zeus had shown him mercy, Ixion's arrogance led him to believe that he could defy the gods and act without consequence. In the end, his punishment was a reflection of his own sins, an endless cycle of suffering and regret. Chapter 6. The Curse of Sisyphus. Another mortal who dared to defy the will of Zeus was Sisyphus, the cunning king of Corinth. Sisyphus was known for his cleverness and trickery, but his intelligence would ultimately lead him to commit acts that earned him the wrath of the gods. Sisyphus was a man who believed that he could outwit the gods themselves. He was a master of deceit, always scheming and plotting to gain more power and wealth. But his greatest act of defiance came when he attempted to cheat death itself. When Thanatos, the god of death, came to claim Sisyphus, the cunning king devised a plan to avoid his fate. He tricked Thanatos into being bound in chains, rendering the god powerless. With Thanatos imprisoned, no one on earth could die, and chaos soon spread across the land. The gods, realizing that something was amiss, were furious. Hades, the god of the underworld, demanded that Sisyphus be punished for his insolence. Zeus, too, was enraged by Sisyphus's defiance. Death was a natural part of the order of the universe, and by cheating death, Sisyphus had disrupted the balance of life and death. Zeus sent Hermes, the messenger of the gods, to free Thanatos and bring Sisyphus to the underworld. But even in death, Sisyphus's cunning did not wane. Before he died, he instructed his wife to leave his body unburied and perform no funeral rites. When Sisyphus arrived in the underworld, he feigned outrage at his wife's actions, claiming that she had dishonored him by failing to bury him properly. He begged Hades and Persephone to allow him to return to the world of the living, so that he could ensure that the proper rites were performed. The gods, moved by his plea, granted him permission to return to the living world. But Sisyphus had no intention of keeping his promise. Once he was free from the underworld, he refused to return, living out the remainder of his life as though he had escaped death for good. But Sisyphus's defiance would not go unpunished. When he finally did die for the second time, Zeus condemned him to an eternal punishment that would reflect his arrogance and deceit. In the depths of Tartarus, Sisyphus was tasked with pushing a massive boulder up a steep hill. Each time he reached the summit, the boulder would roll back down, forcing him to begin the task again. For all eternity, Sisyphus was trapped in an endless cycle of futile labor, his punishment a reflection of his own arrogance. He had believed that he could outwit the gods, but in the end his cleverness had only led to his downfall. The story of Sisyphus is a powerful reminder that no one, not even the cleverest of mortals, can escape the will of the gods. Zeus's wrath, once kindled, was a force that could not be avoided, and those who defied him would face consequences that echoed throughout eternity. Chapter 7. The Punishment of Tantalus. Tantalus, a king favored by the gods, was another mortal whose actions incurred the wrath of Zeus. Though he had been granted the rare privilege of dining with the gods on Olympus, Tantalus's greed and hubris led him to commit a crime so heinous that his punishment became one of the most infamous in all of Greek mythology. Tantalus, who ruled over the kingdom of Lydia, was beloved by the gods for his charm and hospitality. He was often invited to join them in their feasts on Olympus, where he would dine on ambrosia and nectar, the food and drink of the gods. But despite the favor he enjoyed, Tantalus was not content. Driven by greed and a desire to impress the other mortals, Tantalus made the unthinkable decision to steal ambrosia and nectar from the gods and bring it back to his kingdom. He believed that by sharing the divine food with his people, he would elevate himself above all other kings and gain unrivaled power. But theft was not the only crime Tantalus committed. In an act of sheer arrogance and cruelty, Tantalus decided to test the omniscience of the gods by serving them a feast made from the flesh of his own son, Pelops. He wanted to see if the gods would notice the deception, believing that he could trick even the most powerful beings in the universe. When the gods realized what Tantalus had done, their fury was boundless. Zeus, in particular, was enraged by the betrayal and the desecration of the sacred bond between mortals and gods. Tantalus's punishment was swift and eternal. He was cast into Tartarus, where he was condemned to stand in a pool of water beneath a fruit-laden tree. Though the water rose to his chin and the fruit hung just above his head, he could never drink or eat. Each time he bent down to drink, the water receded, and each time he reached for the fruit, the branches lifted out of his grasp. Tantalus's eternal torment, the constant presence of food and drink that he could never consume, became a symbol of the consequences of greed and hubris. The phrase tantalizing, derived from his name, is still used today to describe something that is just out of reach. The tale of Tantalus serves as a stark reminder that those who betray the trust of the gods and act with arrogance will face severe consequences. Even those who are favored by the gods can fall from grace if they allow their greed and pride to overcome them. Chapter 8. The Conclusion of Zeus's Wrath. The tales of Zeus's wrath are numerous and varied, each one a reflection of the complex nature of the king of the gods. Though he was capable of great compassion and mercy, Zeus was also a god of justice and retribution, and those who defied him, whether they were gods, titans, or mortals, would face the full force of his anger. From the torment of Prometheus to the destruction of the giants, from the flood of Deucalion to the eternal punishments of Ixion, Sisyphus, and Tantalus, the stories of Zeus's wrath serve as powerful reminders of the consequences of hubris and defiance. Yet, even in his wrath, there was often a sense of balance. Zeus did not punish without cause, and his anger was always directed at those who had broken the divine order or committed acts of betrayal. His judgments, though severe, were a reflection of his role as the ultimate arbiter of justice. In the end, the tales of Zeus's wrath are not merely stories of punishment and destruction. They are also stories of the importance of respect for the gods, the dangers of arrogance, and the need for balance in all things. For though Zeus's anger could be terrifying, it was always tempered by his wisdom and his understanding of the greater order of the universe. And so, the story of Zeus's wrath comes to an end, but the lessons of these ancient myths continue to resonate through time, reminding us of the power of the gods and the consequences of defying the will of Olympus.
Farewell, dear traveler. Your journey may pause for now, but the echoes of our adventures linger like stardust on the wind. Until our paths cross again in another chapter of mystery and wonder, may your dreams be filled with magic and your heart ever brave.